You know, in this digital world we've built to connect all of us, something has gone really, really wrong. There's this sickness in the system, right? A kind of ghost in the machine that feels like it's actively pulling us apart. Today, we are not just going to look at the symptoms, we are digging for the source code of our discontent in this explainer.
I mean, you felt it, haven't you? That exhaustion, the constant low-level outrage, that feeling that you're either shouting into a void or just screaming into an echo chamber. It really feels like these platforms, which were designed for connection, are actually engineered for conflict. So the big question we have to ask is, why does it all feel so fundamentally broken?
All right, let's get into it. We usually think of these problems as, glitches or bugs that can just be patched up. But what if they aren't? What if the dysfunction is actually a core feature? This is the whole idea behind what's called the social media prism, a system that doesn't just reflect our reality, but actively bends and distorts it into something more polarized, more unequal, and frankly more toxic.
Now, researchers have documented 3 of these core dysfunctions over and over again. First up, fragmentation. We're basically sorted into these tribes that almost never talk to each other. Then there's amplification. The loudest, angriest voices get the microphone. And finally, inequality. A tiny, tiny fraction of users get nearly all of the attention, while the rest of us are pretty much just background noise. These are the symptoms of the disease we're looking at today.
For years, we've had one prime suspect for all this chaos: the algorithm. You know, that secret sauce, that little black box of code that decides what we see and what we don't? We blame it for everything. But what if the algorithm is just a scapegoat? What if the real problem is something much, much deeper in the very way these platforms are built?
To find that out, a team of researchers did something pretty radical. They decided to build an entire social media universe from scratch. Seriously, think of it like a digital petri dish, a totally sterile environment where they could just put in the basic ingredients of social media and watch what grew. No corporate interests, no ad models, just pure, raw interaction.
So here's how they did it. First, they created 500 AI agents, and each one had a unique persona based on real-world data, political beliefs, interests, backgrounds, the whole shebang. Then, they started feeding these agents real news headlines. And finally, they gave them just 3 simple things they could do: post, repost, and follow each other. And then, they hit run and just watched what happened. Now, this is the crucial part. The single biggest difference between their simulation and the real world, the thing that makes this experiment so powerful, is what they left out. In this digital petri dish, there was no complex engagement hacking recommendation algorithm. Zip, the timeline was just a simple mix of posts from people you chose to follow and popular posts from others. They basically removed the main suspect from the crime scene entirely.
So they built this little digital utopia, right? Free from the corrupting influence of the algorithm. A clean room for online society. You'd think a healthier, more balanced world would emerge, wouldn't you? Well, this is where our story takes a really dark turn. The sickness didn't need an algorithm to show up. It grew all by itself.
Just let that sink in for a second. With no code designed to optimize for outrage, no system built to keep you scrolling, what happened? What kind of world did these AI agents actually build for themselves? The first result was chilling. The researchers measured political segregation using a tool called the EI index. Okay, so a score of -1 means you have a perfect echo chamber, where nobody ever interacts with the other side. The simulation score? -0.84. Without any algorithm pushing them, the agents spontaneously lock themselves into these super partisan bubbles.
Next up, they measured inequality. So the Gini coefficient is a scale from 0 to 1, where 1 is total inequality. One person has everything. For followers, the simulation scored 0.83. What that means is the top 10% of users snatched up nearly 80% of all the followers. A tiny, unelected elite just naturally rose up to dominate the entire network.
But this is the most devastating number of all. When it came to reposts, to actual influence, the spread of ideas, the Gini coefficient was 0.94. That is near total inequality. A measly 10% of posts got 90% of all the attention. The marketplace of ideas wasn't just a little tilted. It was practically a monopoly.
So here's the knockout punch. The echo chambers, the crazy inequality, the amplification of a few loud voices, none of it was caused by an algorithm. It was emergent. It was innate. The sickness wasn't some software bug. It was a feature of the system's fundamental DNA, the simple, seemingly innocent acts of following and sharing.
So the diagnosis is grim, but is there a cure? Well, the researchers didn't stop there. They decided to test all the most common fixes people are always proposing for social media. If the system is just innately broken, can we at least force it to be better with some clever interventions?
They tested 6 different potential cures. They tried the one everybody asks for, a pure chronological feed. They tried toning down the most dominant voices. They tried boosting content from the other side, promoting bridging content to show empathy, and even hiding all the stats like follower counts and reposts. Surely one of these had to work.
The results were, to put it lightly, sobering. Almost nothing worked. Hiding stats? Did nothing. Boosting the other side? Nope, nothing. But look closer at this. The chronological feed, the one we all think we want, it did reduce inequality a bit, but it actually made extremism worse. And promoting bridging content, which was designed to bring people together, actually made inequality worse. The system didn't just resist being fixed. The cures often had their own toxic side effects.
So if the algorithm isn't the problem, and the cures don't really work, we are forced to stare down this single, awful truth. The problem isn't in the code that runs on the architecture. The problem is the architecture. So here's the core mechanism. Our human brains are wired for what researchers call affective reactive sharing. That's that quick emotional hit, that little shot of dopamine we get when we share something that makes us furious or makes us laugh. But on social media, that share does more than just spread a post. It actively builds the network. Every angry repost forges a new link, strengthening a connection and deciding who gets to be visible and influential in the future.
And this right here is the central dystopian horror of it all. The architecture itself is non-human. It doesn't have morals, it doesn't have goals, it has no desire to make us better people. It's just a system that is perfectly designed to exploit our most basic biological human wiring. Our need for social validation, our tribal instincts, our emotional reactivity. Our most natural human responses are the very fuel for this unnatural, alienating machine.
The researchers just stated plainly, this isn't just speculation. Their simulation gives us powerful evidence that the root of the problem is the architecture itself, a world built on networks that literally grow and strengthen through our most reactive, least thoughtful, emotional sharing. We are, with every single instinctive tap, building the walls of our own digital prisons.
Which leaves us with a final and honestly a terrifying question. We have spent a decade trying to fix the software, to tweak the algorithm. But if this research is right, if the fundamental blueprint of follow and share is inherently flawed, then what? If the very concept is the problem, what on earth do we build next?